Welcome listeners, viewers and online guests to this in our session of Safe to Trade presentations. I'm your host Kelvin Wood. I'm also the certification body manager for Safe to Trade at Shield Safety. And this month we continue our webinar series, providing you with lots of valuable updates and information all about the scheme. So I hope you enjoyed today's session, and thank you very much for those of you joining us live in our virtual forum. After our conversation today, we will have some time with our online guests to ask some questions. So if you have a question and you think that's you, just type a comment into the comments box, and at the end of the session, we will put as many of those comments to our guests as time permits. So speaking of guests, I'm joined with some very special people today. So let's make some introductions. We have Caroline Benjamin from Food Allergy Aware. We have Sterling Crew as a strategic advisor at Shield Safety. And we have our consumer representative, Mia Horton, joining us today. Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for taking some time out of your busy schedules to join us today. Let's start with a few introductions. So, Caroline, please tell us a little bit about yourself and your business, Food Allergy Aware.
Good morning, and thank you for inviting me to join you guys today. So Caroline Benjamin, I started Food Allergy Aware in 2013. I do have intolerances towards gluten and dairy. I wanted to try and make it safe for people dining out, so I set up a food training consultancy business, and it's just grown. I mean, 11 years down the line, we're still going, and we're still working, and change is still happening within the allergen field. One of the things that we did, we've won awards with the Society of Food Hygiene and Technology in 2019 and 2023 as Best Small Business. And one of the things that I'm very keen to promote is the safety of people with allergens. So my colleague Jackie McPeak and I set up Hospitality Allergen Support UK, and we've done a near miss reporting campaign. We created a report and have a database where we're trying to encourage food businesses to capture information. So that's it in a nutshell.
Lovely, thank you, Caroline. And Sterling, welcome back to the Safe to Trade webinar series. Please reintroduce yourself to the listeners, please.
Thank you, Kelvin. Hello, everybody. My name is Sterling Crew, and I've been in the food sector for some 40 odd years now. And I've worked both. Yeah, don't laugh, please, Kelvin.
It's a respectful smile.
Yes, a respectful smile. So my background is I started life as an environmental health practitioner. So I've worked in a local authority. I've worked in retailers like Marks and Spencer's and Tesco, and in the branded world for Coke. And actually, I've been a technical director of a food factory as well. So I've got that kind of frontline experience of managing allergens. All I would say is when I joined the sector 40 years ago, Kelvin, allergens weren't on our radar at all. We didn't think about them in regulation, and certainly in the manufacturing never thought about them, but now they're probably one of the most important things in anybody's food safety management system. And so it's great to be celebrating Food Allergy Awareness Week. It's never been more important than it is now. As we know, with 8% of children having a food allergy and 2% of adults, that's a lot, isn't it? And I think that's what we're talking today. If you're in a restaurant, that means that 1 in 10 of your customers could be affected by this. So I'm looking forward to hearing what everyone's got to say and the questions, of course.
Wonderful. Thank you, Sterling. And finally, Mia, you're here as our consumer representative today. So introduce yourself to the viewers, please.
Yes, I am. Thank you, Kelvin. So my name is Mia Horton. I'm a designer, and I've had a really serious food allergy since I was about 10 years old. I'm especially allergic to all types of nuts, seeds, rye, oats, barley, and prawns. And after a really serious incident that I had on a long-haul flight in my early 20s, my nut allergy has also turned airborne. So that makes it particularly difficult, really, when you're eating out. Makes it quite kind of an anxious experience, really, which obviously really affects my day-to-day life.
Thank you, Mia. And for the benefits of anyone who's not joined these webinars before, just to introduce myself formally, I'm Kelvin Wood. I'm an environmental health practitioner by trade, currently working as certification body manager for Shield Safety Group. My history is a food business operator in the hospitality industry before converting and retraining as an environmental health officer with public and private sector experience. So let's crack on with today's topic. As Sterling mentioned, today we start Allergy Awareness Week. So we're going to concentrate our conversations today all about safe to trade and how we can protect vulnerable people and vulnerable groups, consumers, and they can utilize the scheme to make informed decisions about where to eat. But moreover, just a talking point around the issue of allergens and the importance of this in the modern age and how it affects people personally. So whether that's yourself as a viewer or whether you're just here for a little bit of empathy for those in that situation. So let's start off with yourself, Mia. So we'll just say ta-ta for now to Caroline and Sterling, who'll join us a little bit later. Thank you. So Mia, we've invited you on today, as we said, as our consumer representative. And for people who've watched these webinars before, you'll notice a few months ago, we ran a similar session about vulnerable groups for pregnancy. And we had Liz talk about some of the issues she faced dining out while pregnant. So thank you for joining us today, Mia. As the voice of your consumer, can you tell us a little bit, as much as you feel comfortable doing so, about why are you classed as vulnerable and how does this kind of affect you eating out?
Yeah, so my food allergy, like I mentioned before, it's a really serious one. So not only can I not eat, all types of food myself, but it's also difficult because it's airborne. So I can't sit anywhere near other people eating nuts. So that makes it particularly difficult, really. And it kind of makes me unable to book a restaurant without doing a fair bit of research. There's certain types of food that I would never really be able to go and eat out. It's difficult because generally speaking, I don't necessarily mind if I have more of a, simple menu or not as exciting food. But it's difficult to, because it affects other people as well. So for example, if it's a big group of people who's booking to go out for dinner, I'm always the awkward one, having to make people change their plans, and it kind of affects that decision quite a lot, really.
Yeah, how does that make you feel?
To be honest, I had this yesterday actually. It's a group of interior designers, and we're all going to go out in June, and trying to find a date, and on everyone else's radar, it's just all about which date they could make or can't make. And I kind of said, well, I can make it, but let's see where you decide to go, because I might not be able to come. And then we're like, oh, where can you go? Oh, can you go to this place? And I said, oh, no, unfortunately not. And then it does make you feel awkward, really.
So the awkwardness in a group setting is something that particularly kind of bothers a little bit. But what about when it's just yourself and your family? I mean, I can imagine someone in a similar position might be thinking that they just won't take the chance and won't eat out. But obviously you don't want to put that own restriction on your own life. So how do you go around eating out? Do you find you still get to do it?
Well, there's always a risk, and there's always going to be a risk when I eat out. And every restaurant I go to tell me that there's a risk if I do eat there. But end of the day, you've got to live as well. And so we don't go out, as a family, we don't go out eating as much as probably other families do. But we do still go out, yeah. It's kind of a calculated risk from my point of view. And I also want to be really sure about what I eat. If my husband says, oh, do you want to try some of this? I wouldn't, because it's not really worth it, for just a taste of it. I would need to do a bit more kind of checks before I eat a dish, if that makes sense.
So you say checks. Where do you find you get your information from when you're running due diligence? Is it just directly from the restaurant, from the server, or do you do your own research?
I always do some research before I go out in terms of just checking the menu. So I would check mainly for the nut part of my allergies.
Yeah.
If it's too many dishes with nuts in, which would be kind of classed as popular dishes, then I would, well, just not go there, I guess. But then when I get to the rest, well, sometimes I give them a call before, have a chat to them when I arrive. I quite often ask if we could sit a little bit, sitting right in the middle of a restaurant is kind of the worst spot for me because there's more people around me. So I'd rather sit a bit in the corner. And then it depends on the person who's taking the order. Some people are really confident. Some people are really not confident. And then I might sometimes ask to speak to the chef. It depends on the situation, really.
Yeah, you mentioned about looking at the menu in advance. So, if you were researching a restaurant to eat at and you went on their website and they didn't hold a copy of the menu on their website, would that be an absolute no-go and it would rule them out? Or would you then go ahead and telephone them? Or, so that's something that maybe a lot of food business operators on the call may not think of, how useful it is to host a menu online just to give people that first check-in.
Yeah, I don't think a lot of people kind of realize how important that is. I would definitely not go to a restaurant that didn't have an online menu, for sure.
Yeah. Do you find often you might look at an online menu and then turn up and they've recently changed the menu and you're a little bit frustrated, or has that not happened?
Well, sometimes they say, we have a seasonal menu and we might change it on the day. And that's always a little bit scary, to be honest. I think the worst thing is, to be honest, more fancy restaurants are worse for me because little dots of this and little dots of that, which is obviously generally kind of your dream plate of food, probably for me is quite difficult. And as an example, one Christmas, me and my husband got a tasting menu visit to a really nice kind of Michelin star restaurant as a present, which was obviously an amazing present. But very difficult to execute. So I phoned them and, if it's a set menu and everyone's eating the nuts, several nut dishes, it's just a no-go. So what they ended up having to do, I was kind of their worst customer. They had to put us in their private dining room and kind of just take me away from the whole, dining space, really. But prior to that, they offered that we could, we could come, but we could sit and eat in our room. And we were like, well, it's an expensive meal. And, you're made to feel like you're awkward and a bit different, really.
Yeah. And you want to enjoy the experience of the ambience of the restaurant. You don't want to sit in the cupboard.
Why I couldn't enjoy it as much as anyone else. So for me to sit in the room to eat it is a bit, degrading, really.
And what kind of things give you confidence when you're out in a restaurant as to, you said you think that you'll be safe, you trust the information presented to you, be it in writing, be it verbally. Do you have any kind of telltale signs almost?
Well, I think one of my issues is that my allergies kind of span wider than the 14 allergens. So quite often, as soon as you mention an allergy, they bring their folder out and they have ticks with the 14 allergens. And for me, that's not really giving me confidence enough because, well, partly I got more allergies than the 14 allergens anyway. But I need more information than that. So I want to, well, firstly, I often pick dishes which are very kind of clean and simple and that I know probably wouldn't contain it anyway, just to make it easier for the chef as well. But I think, to be honest, when they say that they're going to go and speak to the chef, I think that gives confidence. And the best thing really is when they write down the list of allergies that I've got, go and speak to the chef, come back. And sometimes they say, you can't have, let's say that there's chips with the food. Fortunately, the chef said that, it's not safe for you to have a chips because we also fry something containing almonds, for example.
Yeah. Yeah.
That actually then gives me confidence, because that, you know, I can tell that they thought about it, and they've actually gone that step further and thought about cross-contamination as well.
Yeah. And tell us, if you will, if you're comfortable, tell us about some of the times where unfortunately things have gone wrong, and you know what's actually happened to you in the past.
Yeah, I mean, for example, I've been to events, like trade events, for example, and I've been told in advance that the caterers have been informed that it's not going to have any nuts. So I've been in quite a confined space. There's been about 250 people. You see the trays of canapes going around. I'm always, when I'm out and about, I'm on high alert, you know, constantly looking around. So then I can see these walnuts kind of traveling around on trays, and I'm going, uh-oh, right, this could be bad. And I've ended up kind of trying to get myself out of the room. But before that happened, basically I've had an attack and been carried out by ambulance. So, but generally speaking, when we're out and about, I've got 2 young sons, and they are also on high alert, bless them. They kind of have to. So, you know, we've been at the airport, sat down, they were going to have their sandwich. Someone sits down next to us, brings out a bar, a Snickers bar, and my then 4-year-old went, "Mummy, run, nuts!" And it's kind of, you know, it's just, yeah. I was going to say,
it's quite
to be my little.
It's quite heartbreaking that a
but
child so young is in that defensive position to protect you. It's very sweet, but it is heartbreaking that they've obviously seen the effect of this on you. Yeah, what a shame. I know we were talking offline as well about your experience on the flight, where you were saying the main dish was controlled, but not the side dishes. Tell us a little bit about that experience.
Yeah, so generally, if you have a food allergy, you always get served your food before, on a long haul flight, you always get served your food before everyone else. But this time I didn't. So they just came up with a menu and asked me what I wanted. So I said, well, hang on, I've got an allergy and I need to, you know. And they came back twice. I think there's a little bit of a language barrier as well. But she came back twice asking what my allergy was. And what happened was she went and took a tray. She swapped the main dish, and it got written on it, "No nuts," all over the box. So that obviously gave confidence, you know, because it was really written in big letters, "No nuts." But she hadn't swapped the starter or the dessert. So that then resulted in a really bad attack. So because I didn't have any medication on board, this was quite, at the time, allergy wasn't quite as bad as it is today. And I think it's because of that incident, actually, that it got so much worse. Because when I then came back to the UK and I was in the office working, and someone started eating nuts kind of nearby my desk, I then had my first airborne attack, which obviously I didn't realize that was going to happen because I'd never had that before. So.
Yeah, it's just shocking to them, very distressing.
You know, to her, it was just a little mistake, but actually it's affected my whole life. I now can't go out eating in restaurants feeling confident. So, you know, it's a big, it's important.
What would you like to see, Mia? Is there anything that you feel businesses or regulators could do additionally to support people like yourself with allergen needs?
Well, I think obviously there's lots of different allergens, allergies, and I'm not saying that one allergy is more important than others, but nut allergies especially are getting very, I was going to say popular. It's not a popular, but common, I should say. And I really don't understand the obsession by restaurants to have so many nuts on the menus. Is it really necessary to start with? I mean, I think in the whole airline industry, I think it should be banned anyway. I think people owning a restaurant should see it as a bit of a selling point. You know, if I recently went to a restaurant that actually didn't have any nuts on the menu, and I went up to the owner and I said, I applaud you. I mean, it's amazing. I'm going to tell everyone I know that, you know, this is a safe place to come to. So surely that's a selling point. You know, I'm sure I brought loads of new customers to them. But in terms of their regulations, I just don't think I think it lacks a bit of consistency, really. I think it'd be good. I know that you have 14 allergens, but like I said, it's not enough. So it'd be good if it's, like a go-to place where I could feel safe, really.
Wonderful. Thanks, Mia, and thanks for being so open and honest with everything that you've said. Let's bring in Caroline. Thank you, Mia. So, Caroline, thank you for standing by and listening to everything there. So, from your perspective, was Mia's account of her own situation, is that particularly common from what you hear in your allergy advice?
Yeah, I think it is. I mean, I suffer from gluten and a dairy intolerance as well, so I can have a personal experience. But you know, we sort of go out to dine, and we do a lot of research. We go online. The the amount of food businesses that have allergy policies is very minimal. If you were to Google allergy policy and try and find somewhere to eat, it's not there. And what we try and recommend is that you have an allergy policy which is internal and it's got the full details, and then you have an external one on your website about what you can achieve and what you can't achieve, whether you do handle nuts or whether you don't. The fact that you train your staff to a certain level, that you have an allergy expert on board, all those sort of items are going to be alleviating the anxiety for someone with an allergy and bring that stress down to a level which is acceptable. And as Mia said, you know, when we dine out, we're a family of 5 and a half, and we go out for special meals. And you know, myself and my son are both gluten and dairy free. We choose where we go to, but it's really, really difficult for us to find a venue that does a starter, a main course, and a dessert which is gluten and dairy free. And literally businesses are losing out. Like Mia said, it's a unique selling point if they provide. So if we go out and we can't have a starter, nobody else is going to have a starter. So that's like maybe 25, 30, 40 pounds. If you're going to just offer me a fruit salad or a sorbet for a dessert, I'm probably not going to have it, because you know, fruit salad's not a pudding. We want something nice. So again, that's another 30, maybe 50 pounds. So that's about, you know, 80 pounds that a business is missing out on, which they could, you know, could well do with in the current climate. And I think, you know, negative customer experiences and you know, just trying to put a positive spin on it and have a positive customer journey, so that the customer can look at the menu and you can say, okay, this is our policy and this is our menu. Give us a call if you have allergens outside the 14. We're happy to try and discuss that with you. And I know that there's a lady called Alexa Barakaya, and her little boy Sydney has had allergies from a very young age. She actually was at my first event in 2013. And literally, they go out, they're an Italian family, so they want to be social. And that's what it's about, isn't it? Being social, not having to worry about, you know, being sort of stood on the outside watching everybody else enjoy themselves. But, you know, there are things that you can do. So if you have a large party and a few of them have got allergies, get them to come early in the evening. So they come at 6 or 6:30, so they're there at the start of a session, or come at 12 o'clock, so they're there at the start of a session. Everything's cleaned down, and, you know, you can serve that person or that family quite safely and adapt to their needs. Multiple allergies is a major issue for kitchens, but actually if you tell them in advance, and then they'll probably say to you, what can you eat? So have a discussion about what you can have, and then you can actually make it a lot easier before you actually go through the door.
Yeah, really good point what you mentioned about the food policy actually being externally visible. All too often, it's just a single page safe method within a food safety management system, and it might be very generic. It might just list 14 allergens. It might not have information around process. What are some of the kind of common misconceptions around allergen regulation or regulatory control on allergen management?
I think it's the law for a start. I was just saying earlier that I was at an event last week and I had an issue with trying to figure out what I could eat. And I said to the person behind the counter, what can I have that's gluten and dairy free? I can't tell you. And that was his complete blank. Nope, I can't tell you. There's the matrix. Go and have a look. And I'm like, literally, there's a whole queue of people behind me, and I have to go through this matrix. Nothing was labeled on the table at all. And literally, one of the things that we have to really get over is that having an allergy matrix does not mean you're inclusive. I go to conferences, as Mia was saying, I go to events, I tell them about my allergens, I arrive for lunch, and they have nothing on the menu. Oh, but we have an allergy matrix. Yeah, I can see that. But there's nothing on there that's wheat and gluten free or milk free that I can have. So they haven't even taken into account those customers and those, visitors that have got an allergy. And I think, and then the next step at the event I was at last week, I tried to talk to a catering manager. And the first thing she said to me was, "Oh, it's Natasha's law. We can't tell you." And literally, I'm on a buffet, and literally that
Open
law
food.
doesn't apply. Yeah, exactly. So again, it's all about training and communication. I know that within the training that we give on the high floor training, we've added a complete module on communication because having to understand, walk in the person's shoes that has actually got that allergy, be empathetic, be reassurance, be that person that actually goes back. The number of times I've been at a dinner and I've asked a question to see if something's safe to eat, but no one comes back to me. No one feeds back or comes back and reassures me. I'm not going to start eating. So everyone around me is eating and I'm just waiting. And
Yeah.
that isn't good either.
We look at this from a very much the consumer's perspective, and rightly so. You are the customer. But what do you think the reasons for that are? Do you think it's poor customer service, or do you think maybe it's fear of getting it wrong?
I think it's a bit of both, to be fair. I think where the word is in the clue, it's hospitality. We're a hospitality business, and just because somebody's got a food allergy, it doesn't mean you have to put a blank wall up and say, "I'm sorry, we can't, we can't, we can't, we can't, we don't know." It's all about, trying to put that positive spin on it and just trying to make it much more personable for the customer. I think, there's a lot of disclaimers out there, and I would advise everybody against getting a customer to sign a written disclaimer. It can blow up in your face quite easily. Disclaimers are not worth the paper they're written on. You can do a checklist. You can go through the card and say, "I've done this, this, and this, and this. Are you happy with this?" And it's about giving them an informed decision. It's about making them aware about how good your processes are. The food allergy customer knows there is a percentage, about 99.9% that you're going to be okay. There might be that small percentage that you're not, but if you start talking to them about the way you manage your processes, the way that you do your supply chain, the way you don't have make contains, then it just gives that customer an informed decision to be able to make that choice to say, "Well, I'm going to eat here or I'm going to walk out the door."
Absolutely, absolutely. And what kind of things are your customers or the people you engage with? What are they? What are they asking to see? What additional support and confidence is needed?
I think just recently we've done a sort of like children's area type customer, and they just want to keep people safe. They want to make sure they're doing everything they can to the nth degree, that they've taken everything into account. We have some clients where they've had issues where something has gone wrong and they want to figure out how it is, and they're still doing training with their staff, and they're still not getting it right. So basically, they have a conference or an event. They've been told that the person's got an allergy to, say, for example, poppy seeds, which are outside it. And then the chef has got a list of all these allergens. And he thought, "Oh, it'd be quite nice to put poppy seeds on the sausage rolls," or something to that example. And
Yes.
again, thinking, engaging with people and making them take a step back and look at the menu you're developing. I'm not sure if you're aware, but there's a hotel in London, a five-star hotel in London. I'm not sure if I'm allowed to name it, but they're doing amazing stuff. So in 2016, they redesigned their kitchen, they redesigned their menu, and they were getting so many requests for allergen meals. So they don't have nuts, they don't have gluten, they don't have, I think it's milk, and I think sesame is off the menu. I'd have to double check, but they took it off the menu, didn't tell anybody for 6 months, and then their PR company got on board. They launched it, and their bookings went up by 30%. But as
Wow.
the executive chef says on there, they engage all the staff, everybody in the kitchen, from the porters to the event staff, are all engaged in it. And you have to make it a whole ownership thing. Because if you just have one or two people, within the gateways, etc., things can go wrong. But if everybody, if somebody says, "Oh, have you checked that as it goes out the door, or is that hasn't got a flag on it? Should that be right? Or is it on a square plate? On have I washed my hands because?" Or those sort of things. We can all sort of like share that ownership, and I think it has to start from the top down. If the top of the business doesn't agree, then somewhere it loses its momentum on the way down.
Yeah, and how powerful are voluntary third-party assurance schemes like Safe to Trade that kind of interrogate and stress test allergen management every single year as opposed to regulatory activity?
Essential, absolutely essential. We know that the food hygiene rating scheme does not mean that a venue is safe for somebody with allergens. We know that's not included on there, and it's something we'd like to see some sort of a tick or a mark or whatever to do that. But being able to go in and audit, self-audit, and then obviously having external auditors is so key to making sure that businesses are doing the right thing. And I think picking up the mistakes before they happen, like we sort of said about near miss reporting, you guys, you have a repository where you can share that information and help other people as well. So yes, so important.
Fantastic, thank you. And just what's new and upcoming? I know you said you wanted to mention the food allergy reaction report. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah. So myself and Jackie McPeak, we set up, as we said, Hospitality Allergen Support UK. We did a campaign to find out about near miss reporting, and we know that we're not doing enough. And I had a role within the aircraft industry, and they had a thing called ACE, Achieving Competitive Excellence, where basically you had to look for things that could go wrong. You had to go and find out if there was a nut or a bolt that was slightly sheared, you had to report it, or even within the admin, because in the airline industry you're taking people's lives into your hands, and that's the same within hospitality. Every day you're taking people's lives into your hands, so you need to be able to pick up on the things that go wrong. So from the outcome of the report, and we can send a link out to the report and to the database, from the outcomes it was very apparent that there was no centralized reporting database unless there's a fatality. The Food Standard Agency obviously collate fatalities or hospitalizations, but things that go wrong on a minor, I say minor to middle basis, they're not being reported and collated UK wide. It's just being kept locally and not shared. And what we want to try and do is do that. So we've set up the database. It's anonymized. You can report it as a customer, or you can report as a business. If you think that something's gone wrong in your business, you're thinking, oh my God, that could happen to somebody else. It's really important to try and share that with other people to make sure that we save a life. We know that Natasha, had Pret taken note of the 6 or 7 families, maybe more, that reported to Pret a Manger there was an issue with the labelling and the way that food was labelled prior to Natasha's death, that reporting to them might have been through social media, it might have been face to face, it might have been through their customer services, but they weren't able to collate it at that time. They weren't able to put that information together. But they do now, and they do take it seriously. She may be alive today. We might not be where we are today. She's left a lasting legacy, but we'd rather that she'd been here. So as a businesses, we need to take notice of that as well. And then going forward, we're looking at Owen's Law. So that's
Yeah.
all being discussed quite a lot. There was a board meeting with the Food Standard Agency last December. They've put a case through to government to recommend that allergen information should be in writing. At this stage, we don't know what that looks like. We just know it's got to be in writing. So it could be on the menu, which I think could be a bit of a struggle for many businesses because menus we know change every day. It could be on an allergy matrix. It could be on software. It could be other ways as well. But one of the things they talked about as well is verbal and written. So the verbal was being put across as best practice rather than mandatory as the writing. Again, we need to have both. We need to have communication, verbal. We need to have it in writing. So the two tie up, so you can get that extra layer of confidence for Mia to go and eat out. So yeah, at the moment, it's gone to the government. Whether they have a consultation, it's not clear. They need to do something by August, but that's not really clear either. I think it could take about 18 months to 2 years possibly to go through. But let's hope that some decision is made at some stage.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's interesting what you mentioned just almost about the somewhat whistleblowing approach. You know, the message to the customer, to the consumer with Safe to Trade is we direct people to the Safe to Trade register to give customer feedback. And if there's any concerns about the allergy controls about a Safe to Trade approved businesses, you can register your concerns on the website, which will trigger a downgrade investigation where we get involved and will remove someone from the register if there are substantiated and genuine concerns about allergen management. So the power is with the people, not just the regulators, on this to hold these businesses to account where they're not doing all they can or all they should.
Definitely, and I think people struggle. Where do I report something to? Where do I go? And on our reporting database, we've got links to the Food Standard Agency. We don't say don't report it to the venue, don't report it there. We're just capturing data. You know, we're not going to investigate fully unless we feel there's a real issue, we see a pattern. But I think, you know, if you go to a festival and you eat food at a festival, who do you report it to? Do you do it to the ticket person? Do you do it to the vendor? There's no, you know, it's very, very difficult for the customer to know where to go to. So hopefully we'll sort of, you know, hopefully be able to direct them with that as well.
Wonderful. Thank you very much, Caroline. We'll bring you in a little bit later, but let's bring Sterling in, who's been sat patiently waiting. Sterling, you've listened to Mia, you've listened to Caroline talk about. For the benefit of people who aren't aware of the severity of allergens, tell us a little bit about the kind of the science and the effects of allergens. And we hear anaphylaxis and sensitivity. You know, what does it all mean?
Well, first of all, can I put it into context? Despite, you know, the things we need to do, we need continuous improvement. The UK, I think, has one of the best allergen management system approaches globally. And anyone that travels outside the UK will see that. I spend a lot of time in China. When I talk about allergens in China, people just don't understand what I'm talking about, even though they have similar issues. And so I think we're pretty lucky that there's a regulator that's got it on its radar. The food industry's got it on its radar, and definitely hospitality has got it on its radar. Now, there are lots of things we can do to improve that, and I'll go through a couple of them for you. Well, first thing, let's celebrate some great news. So what's happened in the last year that is going to improve things next year? Well, if you don't mind me taking a scientific and technical point of view, first of all, the Food and Drugs Administration in America have just approved the first drug treatment for food allergies. And this is an immunotherapy drug, Zola. And at the moment, it's very expensive. So it's not available to everyone. But imagine a world where instead of worrying just about managing the issue, you could actually, a bit like COVID, isn't it? You're trying to do the social distancing, not to get it. But if someone can give you a vaccine to cure it almost, then that's the best way to go. So that could change the future for us dramatically if it could help people. Secondly, detection. You know, the difficult thing about allergens is knowing they're there because they're invisible, aren't they? Which is, you know, with allergens, if you could see the actual allergen there as a different color, you might know, here's a problem. And what we have now is a new detection system based on paper microfluidics. And what this means basically is when I was a student, to detect an allergen, you'd need a piece of equipment the size of the room. Now you've got a piece of equipment that's your mobile phone, and that this is cheap to do. Eventually, I think most people who suffer with food hypersensitivity will have this, and you can actually analyze the food that you're looking at there, and very quickly it will tell you, is that allergen present or not? So again, it's still in early development, but I see that for the future as well, where people will be able to check their food right in front of them just to make doubly sure. It's not.
That's unbelievable. I feel like I'm on an episode of Tomorrow's World.
It's like that, Kelvin, and I say it's Tomorrow's World now, which is amazing. And that's not to say we shouldn't still be doing food safety management, but it's, you know, if you're a sufferer, it gives you more confidence, as Mia was saying. And then we've got AI as well, artificial intelligence, and adapting that for allergen management, where we get better control over the supply chain. And again, it will give consumers more visibility. So I'm sure that AI will be specifically looking at food safety. and specifically looking at allergen management. And that will be a game changer as well, where your iPhone that you carry will be giving you all the information you need to know about the restaurant, the type of food you're eating. There's so much information out there, but the trouble for the average person who is suffering from this condition is getting access to it. So once people get access to it, they can start to make informed choices. I think that's so critical.
Yeah. Why do you think there are more allergen cases these days, Sterling?
Well, I've been pondering this a lot, Kelvin, because as I say, I'm of the age where allergens just weren't mentioned at all. In fact, the first time I heard allergens mentioned might have been in 2020 when Hazel Gowland came into Tesco and said to us, there's a problem called allergens. I mean, it is, that was in the millennium. It was that new. And we don't know, but what we do know is it's increasing, which is giving concerns. As I say, 8% of children have a food allergy and 2% of adults do. That's a phenomenal number when you think 1 in 10 people have got this condition. And that's why hospitality and manufacturing have to wake up. This isn't some type of very, very minority group that's involved. This is a substantial part of the population. So if you're in a restaurant during the day, it's not unlikely someone with an allergen is going to walk in, an allergen issue is going to walk into your restaurant that day. And I suppose people are thinking, well, what's the causes? What's interesting to me is there are about 68 allergens, actually, not 14 food allergens. And in fact, if you go to different parts of the world, there are different allergens listed. In this country, the biggest killer, by far most popular, if you could say that, allergen is milk. Whereas if you go to some countries, it's not featured at all. So it's strange that it's different in different countries.
And is that just because that food group isn't a normal part of the kind of the dietary norm in that country?
That's a really insightful point, Kelvin. I think it is. I think it is the dietary habits that you have in that country. It might be the exposure you get, that maybe you don't get exposed as a young child to it, but then as an adult. So it could be where you're being exposed. Some people are postulating maybe it's something to do with the environment, that's impacting people. And other people are saying, well, look, I think the food allergen charities do a fantastic job in this country, and they punch above their weight. When you think of other things that are going on, they've really captured the public imagination, not least because of the tragedies that we're having. And maybe what we're seeing is perhaps better reporting, whereas in the past, maybe people had these conditions and weren't happy about reporting it. So improved reporting might be part of it. But Kelvin, no one's been able to give the definitive answer, and I suspect it's a combination of a lot of things.
Yeah. What do you think are some of the key things that a food business can do to control allergens?
Well, first of all, it is about people. Whatever we talk about systems and analysis and the science, basically it's about people. And first of all, it's the food business operator recognize that it is a risk. If you don't recognize it, then you're not going to address it. And I think enough customers are coming in for nothing else, asking the question. It's not unusual to sit in a meal and hear people ask a question, are there any food allergies? So hopefully they should be aware about it. And the Food Standards Agency does a lot to publicize it, as do local authority EHPs who are coming into our establishments, and of course Safe to Trade as well. So our first is, know that there's an issue. Then secondly, sit down and work out what control measures you can put in place. But the important thing for me is to let your people know what they have to do and motivate them. You've got to get people motivated. And if you do nothing else in a food business, if you just did one thing, it is make sure you start a conversation with your customers. And it's not unusual now that you sit down and someone says, welcome to the restaurant. And almost the first question they ask is, does anyone here suffer from a food allergy? And that starts a conversation. And then you can put it into your management system, where perhaps if it's a very, very small restaurant, maybe you have 5 staff, it might be the chef that knows what to do and what not to do. If it's a bigger operation, if you're a big retailer, if you're a big caterer, then you'll have quite sophisticated systems around you and have experts to call on. But I always think, if I'm starting a small hospitality business, I get in contact with my local authority, my EHPO, for advice. I go to an expert like yourself and say, come in and tell me what to do. And I just make sure that it is, like any food safety issue, it is a priority for the business. But start with the conversation. Identify a person that might be a risk, and then you can put your systems in place. If everyone says, no, we're fine, well, then you can almost step back a bit and carry on with the work and make sure the other food safety stuff is working.
Yeah, absolutely. So, you know, we talk about allergy awareness or food awareness. What does that mean to you, Sterling?
I think it means two things. If you have a food allergy, if you are food hypersensitive, you are very aware of it, as we just heard from Caroline and Mia. You know, that someone doesn't have to make them there. The consequences of getting it wrong are so dramatic, and we've seen deaths and people being severely injured by it. But it is the people who don't have the condition. So for, you know, if it wasn't for people who had allergies, I don't have any, for instance, so it doesn't bother me. So I won't, you know, it's trying to educate people genuinely who aren't directly affected. And I'm sure if you're a chef and you have an allergy, then you are very aware of it and you're very careful. But if you're a chef and you don't, then you're less aware. And it is trying to make people sure that they're not just educated. Look, here's the information. I can give you that in 10 minutes. It is about, are you training people? So don't just give them the information, making them aware, but train them to do the job. You know, train them at how to do it and what they have to do in their work. And make sure if somebody's not in that job and someone's replacing them, make sure that they are aware and are trained. So it's a combination of, you know, the culture of the organization, make sure people know it's important. The education you can give them. Look, guys, here's the consequence of something that goes wrong. And then lastly, to say, well, look, this is the training. Let's say, what do we actually do? Not just be aware. I'll give you an example. I do talk about food safety culture, and I've got the cutest of grandsons. They're all cute. This one's particular. Got a nice photo of him. And I always put that up when I'm talking about food safety as a way of saying to the audience or one-to-one, this is the person that you could end up killing. And I think it is making people sensitive to the fact that, you know, people do die and people are injured, and it does seem to disproportionately affect young people in that respect.
Just rather selfishly bringing this back to Safe to Trade, obviously you're very involved with the governance of the scheme, Sterling. So, you know, what assurances is a third-party assurance scheme like Safe to Trade giving to allergy sufferers out there? Why is it such an important step for food business operators to sign up to?
Well, first of all, to put it into context, it is for the public, no one else. It's for consumers. That's who it's aimed at. It's not aimed at businesses primarily, and it's not aimed at regulators. So it's trying to help the public make an informed choice. You know, we do have the food hygiene rating scheme, but as has been said already, it doesn't specifically mention allergens, although it's in food management systems. So, you know, if I had an allergy, I would definitely not eat anything that was less than a 5. It gives you extra confidence. The law doesn't really go far enough in making sure things actually happen. It's very general in some respects. What the standard for Safe to Trade does, it specifically mentions allergens. And when people come around to audit and check and talk to you about your restaurant or manufacturing outfit, you're actually talking about allergens. You're forced to talk about it, and there are specific questions. So if I'm a food business, and the type of business that use Safe to Trade are very responsible, they're trying to do the right thing, and they're trying to get an outside person to come in and talk to an expert like yourself, Kelvin. And I think that's what they want really is, you know, is my allergen management system robust enough? And certainly after one of the detailed Safe to Trade audits, which I say specifically covers allergen, unlike a lot of others don't, you certainly come away with this you're doing well, this you need to improve on, or this you need to stop. So it's a great way to hear from someone else. We call it third-party auditing, but basically it's someone's got no contact with your business coming in and seeing it afresh with lots of information they can share. So it's to me, I think it's a great system. Again,
yeah, and for the benefit of the listeners as well, it's really reassuring to share that Safe to Trade identifies requirements that a business needs to meet the standard of Safe to Trade, but also identifies many best practices as well, as we said about identification of allergens that are not just the legal 14, or processes involved in communication for, as you just said, Sterling, greeting the guests and identifying proactively who's got an allergen, if anyone, rather than the legal requirements of just signposting people to the information. So voluntary third-party assurance schemes like Safe to Trade do go that extra mile beyond kind of legal practice into the realm of best practice to give that extra layer of assurance to the consumers. Let's welcome Caroline back in as well. We talk about food business operators from kind of your combined experience, and starting with yourself, Caroline. How do food business operators view these things anymore? I know historically one might have encountered scenarios where people saw the red tape as a little bit of a nuisance, or, you know, I'd rather people don't eat here. Are things like that changing in the modern age?
I think there's a range of that happening. So you're going to have businesses which I've seen sort of signs where we don't cater for people with allergens. We don't feel it's safe. We had this in our kitchen. We had that all the way to the other extreme. So you've got one extreme where they refuse to serve people, and at the other extreme, then they've got the people that do as much as they can. I think it's all about trying to be honest. I think there was a comment on there about you know, about having a blanket may contains statement. We have a poster or a signage that we offer to our clients. And it's along the lines of, we handle the 14 allergens. However, we have strict processes in place that manage that control that. We have training for our staff. Please talk to a member of our staff if you have any anxieties, or, you know, if you have any information that you need, and we will tell you about what we do. And that's the sort of thing you need to do, rather than putting a blanket may contains across everything. You know, coffee shops are quite difficult in the sense of, you know, you've got open cakes everywhere, but if you've got a gluten-free, you have them on the top shelf, you have a thing that goes over the top of them, you have a separate knife, or you physically go and get a clean knife or whatever every time you go for them, and that type of thing as well. It's all about, you know, just trying to alleviate that and have businesses feel confident about what they need to do, isn't it? I think that's the thing.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm conscious of time, so let's have Mia join us again, and yeah, let's have a look at some of the comments that we're receiving and see if we can answer some of the listeners' questions. So I think you've just touched on this, Caroline, but it might be worth repeating. So Jed is asking, if it just says may contain, I will always just assume that it has it in there. That might be one for yourself, Mia. Do you find it really frustrating if you just met with a load of may contains? Is that a kind of a red flag deal breaker for you?
It's so common. It just feels like it's a great excuse for them just not to take responsibility. There's a big supermarket who literally put may contain on every single product. I tend to, from my airborne allergy point of view, if I'm in a room with people and they look at the packet and go, oh, it says may contain, I usually say, that's fine, but I wouldn't eat it. So yeah, it's a no-go for me, unless it's a product that I for some reason have eaten before.
It's almost more of a polite way of saying don't eat here. Yes, Sterling.
Yeah, there's two sides to this. Is that if you cannot control the allergens, you should be making people aware of it. I want people to make an informed choice. So if you're buying a food, and we've seen people die from this, and it's made in a factory that might contain an allergen, but it's not declared on the label because it's not in the ingredients, it's still a risk. So you don't want people just, it's called defensive labeling when you try to protect yourself. But in some cases, it's really warranted. A good example might be vegan food. There are a lot of vegans who think that there's no dairy products in their vegan food, or there's no eggs in their vegan food, two food allergens. But there are. And people have died from eating vegan food because there is allergens in there through cross-contamination. So you don't want the people to get a false sense of security. There's no labeling, so everything in the world is fine. And I think you want a precautionary approach. If I was a consumer affected, I'd want to know, if a restaurant says, well, I can't control the allergens, you'll be taking a risk. Well, if you want to take that risk, that's up to you. But on the background, I think, look, it just doesn't just make good business sense to make sure that you can supply a wider audience, but it just seems morally as well that you want to give people food, you want to share your experience with people, and anything you can do to help people making those decisions and enjoying a good meal, a variety of meals, I think is a good thing.
Absolutely. We have a comment here from David Newsom. Hello, David. Thank you for your comments. Lovely to hear from you. A very good balanced explanation on the consumer issues from Mia. David just wants to know, will this stream be recorded so we can show it to students in training courses? So absolutely yes. For the benefit of anyone who's joined partway through and you want to go back and see the beginning, we will be streaming this over on the socials so you can watch it at your leisure. Thank you, David. Another question from Mia here. So Sophie Marriott wants to ask, thank you, Sophie. What's it like shopping out at supermarkets? So like the retail aspect as well as hospitality, is that a struggle?
Well, I can give you one example on that. So I'm actually Swedish, but I've been living here for a long time. But when I go back home, they're particularly a lot of nuts in Sweden, and there's a supermarket close to my parents' house, and they used to have almost the size of a deli counter right at the beginning of a shop, full of nuts, all open air. And I used to, and there was no way, well, I mean, pretty impossible for me to walk in there, but sometimes you kind of have to. And I used to have a scarf, literally put a scarf around my head, run, as fast as I could past that area to then, feel a bit safer further in, because it's quite a large shop. So it's not necessarily the same here, but there are places with nuts open in there in the shops. And sometimes you get friends or family pointing that out to me and going, oh, don't go to such a shop because they've started selling nuts now, opening there. And it just feels like you have to kind of navigate your life around, or even, toasted, what do they do? Toast almonds and things like that out on the streets. Sometimes it's Christmas time, or, you go to Christmas fair or something like that with a family. And you just have to turn around again, and it just makes you feel really kind of unwelcomed, I guess.
I think we may have time for maybe one or two more comments or questions. I think this is an interesting one from Kevin Robertson. Hi, Kevin. Thank you for joining. If there are indeed 68 allergens, why is the government not doing more than listing the legally required 14? Any idea, is this the way things are going to go, or is it just a matter of resource? Why have we got a legal 14 when there are 68?
Well, from a legal point of view, you couldn't have 68. It would be unmanageable. You wouldn't be able to control it or manage it. So they have gone for the 14 that are the most dangerous for most people. But if you do go around the world, you will see that the allergen list changes. So that's the European list, which is different than the Japanese list, which is different than the American list. I think you have to be aware that ingredients are listed as well. So tomatoes is quite a common allergy. Latex, people who eat bananas is quite a common allergy. So if you're buying a banana, you can see it's a banana, but if it's used in ingredient in a product, if you're buying it in a retailer, it's listed in the ingredients. The trouble is, when you buy it in a restaurant, it's not necessarily listed in the ingredients, nor do you have to list it legally under the allergen legislation. But if you ask that question, do you suffer from an allergen, and someone says bananas, well, then that triggers the same process. So even though it's only 14, if you list the one you have an allergic reaction to, then the system should cut in the hospitality sector and protect you.
Over to Caroline. You've got a very quick point on that.
Yeah, I think, when the allergens were set up, when the law first came in, it came through the EU and came through DEFRA. There's been lots of conversations about adding allergens. I think kiwi fruit has been predominantly there, which Stelly mentions is part of the latex family. Legumes is a huge increase on legumes and pea protein. And because of the introduction of vegan food, pea protein's being added to chips and goodness knows what. So again, that does cause a lot of concern for people. I think there may be a couple added in the future, but it's a long way off because the FSA have got so much other stuff to do. It's not high on their agenda. And I think,
Yeah.
for me, it's fine. And I'm aware of a couple of software companies where you can get the 14 allergens, but also you can click a box to get the full ingredients. And having those full ingredients is just as important. So the people that are outside the 14 allergens, they can get to them. So yeah, there are some softwares out there that can help with that as well. So I think, if you need some information, obviously you can get in touch. But I think, we just have to try and be proactive. And like Sterling says, the process has to kick in. If it's outside the 14 allergens, this is our process. This is what we're going to do. We're going to check all the different products, etc. Because it's they're just as serious. I think people think because it's not an allergen in the 14, oh, it's not as serious. It's not going to be as effective, or it's not going to cause as much harm. But yeah, it can. And I think we do need to be careful and wary of that.
Thank you. I'm just going to end because we have approached time now with a comment made in the chat here from Jed Dunn. It's a rather lengthy comment, so I'll try and summarise where possible. But saying as a publican and a restaurateur, we do have a duty of care every time a customer comes into our establishment. So saying we don't have space, it's not good enough. So it's really, really reassuring that we have people who are joining us this morning on this call who are food business operators themselves, who do take this so seriously as we do as regulators, as partners in helping businesses comply, or even vulnerable persons ourselves. Sterling, Mia, Caroline, thank you so very much for your time this morning and spending it with us and our viewers and listeners. That is all we have time for today. So thank you to everybody who joined us. Apologies to anyone who didn't get the question across. We will engage with our marketing department, and we might be able to put some of your comments and questions in the chat and get some responses onto those too. But thank you all for joining us for this Safe to Trade Allergen Awareness webinar, and we look forward to seeing you all next month when we will be returning with another issue. So on behalf of our guests and on behalf of me and Safe to Trade, thank you very much, everyone, and have a wonderful day. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
Goodbye.
you.
Bye.
Stay safe, everyone.